Et bonjour à toutes et à tous, je suis Bowei Shao du laboratoire de phonétique et phonologie. Je vais vous présenter une étude récente sur les voyelles fricatives du chinois. La présentation sera en anglais. So our talk today provides evidence that the so-called fricative vowels do involve the production of supralaryngeal frication noise as part of the articulation of the vowel, and proposes that the noise target can vary from language to language. This is a joint work with my colleague Matthew Fatak. We will present some basic descriptive issues here. It is generally agreed that the fricative vowels have both a voice source and a supralaryngeal frication noise source as part of their articulation. There is a fricative-like constriction of the tongue against the hard palate, which generates some degree of turbulence. Also, because of this constriction, which is forward to the mid-palate location for high front vowels, F2 is lowered relatively to high front vowels. There are two types we will be referring to here: apical alveolar vowels, which have the most anterior constriction and are transcribed with these symbols here. Second, there are laminal post-alveolar vowels, which we will transcribe using these ad hoc symbols here. There are several unresolved questions about the ways fricative vowels are typically produced. There is disagreement on the manner of the articulation that best describes fricative vowels. Analyses of Standard Mandarin have claimed that its apical vowels are anything from syllabic fricatives to completely frictionless. Here is a typical example from Standard Mandarin, an apical alveolar vowel. Oh, the sound is not passing through. Ce n'est pas le son. Alors, attendez. Alors, je vais réessayer. Non, c'est toujours pas. C'est peut-être moi, en fait, je pense. Alors, je pense que le plus simple sera moi qui le prononce. Alors, so the apical vowel in Standard Mandarin sounds like this: s, s. So in the middle of the apical vowel, there's not too much of frication. Fricative vowels are quite common in Chinese languages beyond the Standard Mandarin, though. Looking beyond the Standard Mandarin, we see why this segment gets its name. Most other instances of apical or laminal vowels are described as having...
I can look for the sound.
Yes.
It must be on the computer. Can you go on the sound menu?
Yes. Okay, so I think... where is my souris? Ah, c'est donc la sortie.
C'est ça, extron, ça va être bon normalement.
Ah, ok.
Essayez.
Okay, thank you. So beyond Standard Mandarin, we have a lot of other types of fricative vowels. Here is an example from Suzhou, where we can hear a strong frication noise. So, well, strong frication noise during the apical vowel, the fricative vowel. Voilà. Okay, so when frication is present, it may also vary in its timing in ways that are not well studied. Fricative vowels can have frication noise across their whole duration, as in Suzhou, the example that we just heard. But the noise can also be phased, focused in the first third or half of the vowel and followed by a noise-free portion. So we can see here that at the beginning of the vowel there is frication, but at the end there is no frication. So another major confound in our understanding of fricative vowels relates to the phonological status of their frication noise, if they do have frication noise, that is. It's often assumed that any frication present in apical or fricative vowels can be attributed to carry-over co-articulation from sibilant onsets. This is probably due to the most studied fricative vowels are focused on the Standard Mandarin, where the apical vowel are allophones of E. When E occurs following a sibilant onset, an apical vowel allophone occurs. which matches the place of articulation of the sibilant. These phonotactics are common for apical vowels in some Chinese varieties, but they are not universal. Now we are going to look at Suzhou, Suzhou Wu, or Suzhounese. It's spoken just to the west of Shanghai. Jixi Hui is a variety in the Huizhou dialect continuum, spoken in southern Anhui province. We will start with Jixi Hui. Unlike in standard Mandarin, the one apical vowel is contrastive with the high front vowel E, as well as the other vowels that are not showing here on distributional grounds. The apical vowel can also occur with non-sibilant onsets, unlike in standard Mandarin, as circled in the table here. The contrastive status of the apical vowel is clear here, and its phonotactics are quite different from standard Mandarin. Next, we have Suzhou. This is a more complicated vowel system in that it has contrastive high front, laminal, and apical vowels. The laminal vowel are similar, has similar similarities in phonotactics to the Jixi Hui apical vowel, in that distributionally they have a solid contrast with E. And they occur basically everywhere E can. The apical vowel in Suzhou do have the classic standard Mandarin vowel, apical vowel phonotactics, however. The three-way place contrast occurs only after the apical alveolar sibilant onsets. So, from what we have seen, fricative vowels can occur with or without the support of sibilant onsets and can occur with or without frication noise. Our research concerns this variation in fricative noise and the forces that are driving this frication to see if we can work out any systematic variability here. Fricative vowels in Chinese are tone-bearing units, and if we have fricative noise consistently, they are also voiced obstruents, which are subject to aerodynamic voicing constraint. Voicing and turbulence are antagonistic. Because of the need to realize tone contrasts, voicing might be prioritized in the trade-off between voicing and frication. So some languages may use low frication or phased strategy. But there is another force working on the other direction. Fricative vowels, when contrastive as in Suzhou or Jixi, have fairly high functional loads. Speakers may seek to avoid confusion with high vowels and exploit any secondary cue available to enhance this contrast. Supralaryngeal frication would crucially provide place information. So some languages may use high frication strategy if there are contrastive vowels which are confusable with fricative vowels. This brings us to our research questions. In our sample of 3 languages, is noise reliably present during fricative vowel productions? What is the temporal arrangement if present, phased or not? And is it dependent on the type of onset consonant? We expect that these properties should be modulated by the phonological structure of the language being examined, that is, fricative vowels should exhibit more frication noise in languages where fricative vowels contrast with non-fricative vowels, namely in Suzhou and Jixi. Now the methods. The materials we used were recorded in China and in the US. We have recorded 10 speakers for Jixi, 15 for Suzhou, and 11 for standard Mandarin. For Jixi and Suzhou, the target was a monosyllabic word embedded in a frame sentence. For standard Mandarin, the target was the first syllable of a disyllabic word embedded in a frame sentence as well. We measured the zero crossing related to studies, the zero crossing rate to study the frication noise. Here we have an example of a syllable S from Jixi. The numbers of zero crossings are higher in S and lower in Z. The overall ZCR is presented as a moving average, as we can see under the waveform. The analysis was done on the nucleic segment indicated here. For each syllable nucleus, we analyzed the onset, the offset, and 20 points in between. The ZCR values are then analyzed using GAMS, generalized addictive mixed models. It can find out if 2 or more trajectories of ZCR are statistically different. The results of the first step of this step is presented in a fitted value figure, as we can see here above. The x-axis represents the normalized time. The y-axis represents the DCR per second. When the DCR is low for the high front vowel E, we can see a low flat trajectory. And when the DCR is high, here for the apical vowel, we can see a high descending pattern. The second question answered by the GAMS is where the difference is located in the time series. This is shown with a difference figure, as we can see here below. So if there is difference, it will be marked as this. We did within language and cross-language comparisons. Within language comparisons will show if the apical vowel and the laminal vowels contain more frication noise than the high front vowel E in each of the 3 languages. And cross-language comparisons will show that in the same context, which of the segments from the 3 languages is the most fricative. Now the results. So standard Mandarin, it is clear that in standard Mandarin, there is no difference in terms of frication noise between the fricative vowels and the high front vowel E. The overall difference is not significant. This pattern indicates that the frication is probably introduced only by the fricative onsets. The Jixi apical vowel, however, is very different from the high vowel E. We can see from the fitted values that frication noise can go halfway through the apical vowel regardless of the onset type. That is to say, after both sibilant and non-sibilant onsets, the apical vowel contains significantly more frication noise than the high front vowel E. These results suggest that the frication noise is inherent and not from the sibilant onsets. Similar to Jixi, the Suzhou apical vowel and laminal vowel contain also more frication than the high front vowel E. We can see that in the fitted values, the apical vowel and the laminal vowels preceded by fricative onsets contain significantly more frication noise. This point can also be seen from the 2 fitted values here. And we can see that when compared to the high front vowel E, the apical vowel and the laminal vowel both contain significantly more frication noise on the first half of the duration. On this figure, we can see here that significantly there is more frication noise in the middle of the laminal vowel compared to E. These results also suggest that the frication noise is inherent and not from the sibilant onsets. Now let's look at the results of cross-language comparisons. The cross-language comparison is evaluated with GAMS, but with normalized zero crossing rates. This is because the record setting may introduce difference in zero crossing rates. So the overall conclusion is that the Suzhou apical vowel is more fricated than the Jixi apical vowel, which in turn is more fricated than the standard Mandarin apical vowel. As we can see from the difference figures, the Jixi apical vowel is less fricated than the Suzhou apical vowel. The Jixi apical vowel is more fricated than the standard Mandarin apical vowel here in the middle of the vowel. And the Suzhou apical vowel is more fricated than the standard Mandarin one at last. Now I'll conclude with some discussion. We do find evidence for frication target in some, but not all, fricative vowels. Standard Mandarin has very weak frication. This is confined to the very beginning of the vowel, suggesting carryover from sibilant onsets as the main cause. It is also the only language examined where the fricative vowels are all allophonic. In Jixi and Suzhou, where the fricative vowels are contrastive, we see stronger frication regardless of the onset type. This suggests some frication is part of the production target of these fricative vowels. We also see that even when a vowel is roughly the same articulatorily and contextually between the 3 languages, such as the apical vowel preceded by sibilants, the 3 languages have different relative levels of frication on these vowels. We think that frication noise is best thought of an expansive way of expanding the Q available to disambiguate vowel qualities. Frication would signal place when it occurs, since it is supralaryngeal in origin made at the constriction, etc. So when frication noise is particularly strong, that signals that it may play a role as a secondary cue for the fricative vowels. However, perceptual work needs to be done to confirm this. So I'll stop here. Thank you for your attention. Merci beaucoup. Et si vous avez des questions ou commentaires,